You thought it was just a kid's show. A sponge, a starfish, a pineapple under the sea. But what if it wasn't? What if SpongeBob SquarePants wasn't just innocent nonsense, but a coded reflection of mental illness, capitalism, and the decay of childhood innocence? What if Bikini Bottom wasn't a cartoon city, but a nuclear testing site? For casual viewers, it's just a weird cartoon they grew up with. For diehard fans, it's a chance to dive deeper into a world they thought they knew. For critics, it's proof that the most colorful worlds can hide the darkest truths. And what if the show that raised a generation was also slowly rotting their brains? This is Behind the Dark Archive, and this is the file they didn't want open. SpongeBob SquarePants premiered on May 1st, 1999, created by Steven Hillenburg, a man who was more scientist than showman. At first glance, the show was surreal, silly, and safe. A hyperactive sponge with a squeaky laugh, flipping Krabby Patties for a greedy crab in a colorful undersea world. But Hillenburg's background wasn't just animation. He studied oceanography, marine biology, and underwater ecosystems. He brought a strange authenticity to the absurd, and some say the original tone of the show was much darker. Early concept art and pilot drafts painted SpongeBob not as a happy-go-lucky sponge, but as a more tragic, almost absurdly existential character. Lonely, obsessive, directionless, trapped in routine and isolation. The humor leaned more cerebral, the pacing was slower, and the underlying message that even in paradise, life can feel meaningless. Nickelodeon executives weren't interested. They wanted something brighter, louder, faster, and marketable. So the edges were filed down. The show got louder, and SpongeBob became manic. Patrick transformed into the lovable idiot, Squidward into the depressed artist archetype, and the show leaned into slapstick chaos over quiet despair. A new icon was born, not by accident, but by corporate calibration. And yet, from day one, something about it felt off. Too chaotic to be calm, too self-aware to be innocent. Look closer, and the mask slips. Bikini Bottom isn't just a wacky undersea town. It's named after Bikini Atoll, the real-life site of 23 nuclear tests conducted by the United States between 1946 and 1958. These weren't small drills. They were massive atomic detonations that permanently scarred the region. Many believe the entire show is built off of that. Not just for undersea life, but for post-nuclear trauma, the lingering chaos of man-made destruction. Fan theories argue that the cast aren't just cartoon characters. They are mutated survivors, twisted into caricatures of humanity by radiation. SpongeBob's porous, ever-shifting form represents instability, mentally and physically. Patrick is cognitively delayed, often portrayed as childlike or completely checked out. Mr. Krabs is obsessed with money to the point of delusion, his moral compass drowned by greed. Squidward lives in despair, bitter, unfulfilled, constantly crushed by the weight of his failed dreams. Sandy wears a literal suit just to survive, trapped in a dome, forever disconnected from her true environment. And Plankton, he's not just the villain, he's the embodiment of petty tyranny, obsessed with dominance, control, and validation. It's not just satire, it's symbolic suffering, disguised as children's entertainment. Zoom out and you start seeing the psychological layers. Each character could represent a different mental illness or a different flaw in late-stage capitalist society. SpongeBob, for example, ADHD, work addiction, and disturbing need for approval. Patrick, learned helplessness, apathy, and an almost nihilistic detachment. Squidward, chronic depression, creative burnout, a crushed middle-class ambition. Mr. Krabs, exploitation, hoarding wealth, and using nostalgia to manipulate others, like his obsession with his Navy days. Sandy, identity displacement, homesickness, and being the lone voice of reason no one listens to. Plankton, narcissistic personality disorder, paranoia, and corporate envy. Even the legendary Krabby Patty formula is a metaphor. It's the American dream, dangled in front of the poor, guarded by the rich, and never meant to be shared. It's not a recipe, it's a trap. Some fans also point out that Bikini Bottom reflects a labor hierarchy. SpongeBob, overworked line cook. Squidward, bitter, mid-tier employee. Mr. Krabs, exploitative business owner. Plankton, failing startup founder. Even SpongeBob's eternal optimism feels manufactured. He works a thankless job, is constantly gaslit by his boss, and still smiles through it all. That's not joy. That's indoctrination. Steven Hillenburg never confirmed these interpretations, but he never denied them either. And maybe the silence speaks louder. When Steven Hillenburg left the show after season 3, things changed fast. The humor became louder, the characters became exaggerated, the tone almost grotesque. SpongeBob shifted from naive optimism to manic unpredictability. Episodes fixated on bodily functions, humiliation, and surreal violence. Fans noticed, critics noticed, even researchers noticed. A 2011 study published in Pediatrics claimed that watching SpongeBob negatively impacted children's attention spans and impulse control. After just 9 minutes of exposure, Nickelodeon denied the claims, but the concern lingered. Meanwhile, older episodes were quietly pulled from rotation. In 2018, Midlife Crustacean was removed from reruns due to inappropriate content. In that episode, Mr. Krabs joined SpongeBob and Patrick on a panty raid. Yes, a literal panty raid in a kid's cartoon. Another episode titled Quarantine Crab was pulled in 2020 due to its resemblance to the real-world COVID-19 pandemic. As the show aged, it became harder to defend, harder to explain, and harder to justify. Today, SpongeBob is a global brand, one of the most recognizable kid shows in history, but the darker truths remain buried just under the surface. The show spawned hundreds of memes, many rooted in mental breakdowns, sadness, and self-hate. It's become a symbol of ironic detachment. A once wholesome sponge now used to express burnout, despair, and internet nihilism. The show also paved the way for a wave of animated chaos content. Shows like Uncle Grandpa, Gumball, and Rick and Morty, where absurdity, mass trauma, and every joke has a hint of existential dread. Steven Hillenburg passed away in 2018. He reportedly didn't want SpongeBob to continue without him. Nickelodeon ignored that request. They expanded the brand, spin-offs, prequels, and merchandising deals. In 2021, they even confirmed SpongeBob was part of the LGBTQ+ community. Some praised it, others accused the studio of posthumous pandering. Regardless of where you stand, one thing is clear. SpongeBob isn't just a sponge anymore. He's a mirror, held up to our childhoods, our culture, and our content economy. They say SpongeBob was made for kids, but maybe that's what makes it dangerous. The colors, the voices, the songs, all perfectly engineered to distract you from what it's really saying. Work until you break, laugh until you're numb, smile even when you hate yourself. That's not just a cartoon, that's a blueprint for burnout. A warning dressed up in a theme song. We were taught that happiness means obedience, that showing up every day, even broken, makes you a good person. That being positive, even when everything hurts, makes you strong. But sometimes, all it makes you is quiet. This is Behind the Dark Archive, where nostalgia isn't sacred and every childhood memory gets filed, eventually, even a sponge. We don't rewrite childhood, we revisit it with the lights on. If you're still watching, you're one of us now. Subscribe, because the next file is already being opened. And thank you so much for watching our videos. We really appreciate it.